in Rafah.
We on to the next.
Something that we've seen before.
Israel and Gaza is cranking up.
An area that was run by Americans.
Israel and Gaza is cranking up.
I mean, the fact of the matter is that Hamas has really been
injured,
indifferent, or I would say even more than that.
Upset
about the fact that the aid has been administered by Americans and Israelis.
Allegedly,
the JHF
struck
is an American
Gaza again
with the help of the Israelis.
Food sites where they're trying to help the Palestinians
in every way, shape, or form. And what they've been doing all along is trying to steal the aid. And so the fact of the matter is that the aid center itself, while it helps the people, becomes a target for Hamas. Furthermore, they also want to show that it is unsuccessful in its deliverable abilities to the Gazan population. So they can then argue that really the people that should be administering the aid should be the United Nations, in particular groups like UNRWA, which are of course been terrorism. So they're trying to revert back to a pre-10-7 reality, given the fact that they want to use their people, which is really the United Nations.
And those Texas floods are kind of bad too.
And parenthetically,
this
is actually part of one of the sticking point issues
over there by San Antonio, a whole lot of hills over there.
The debate about the conditions of the upcoming ceasefire and negotiations.
A whole lot of hills over there in San Antonio.
One of the reservations that the Israelis have has to do, of course, with the JHF, because Hamas is demanding that UNRWA and other United Nations organizations come back into the picture, even though they've been removed. It makes them feel better.
There's a lot of hills out there in San Antonio.
That's part of the push and pull that's playing out here on the aid. But the aid has always been
all that rain coming as fast as it did
to its advantage.
And you ain't got no warning to evacuate.
As far as the trip from Prime Minister Netanyahu, he is going to be making that trip to the White House, and he's made a few now. He's going to be there on Monday, meeting with President Trump. Does that say that we are closer to a potential deal? Because they could have talked over the phone.
Trying to set my other side up over
here. That's got to indicate that it's a little bit more, I guess, serious, and it's progressed farther.
It's not going to be really that long.
First of all, I think it's unique in the sense that
just checking out what's going on.
How strong the U.S.-Israel relationship is.
People have something they want to talk about.
His third visit in 6 months
as I reset
Trump
this
was elected back into office. The fact of the matter is that both leaders, I believe, deserve a
just like that, guys. We got Israel and Gaza
strike. That was a very strong message to all our adversaries, including Israeli adversaries, that the
right when we thought it was over,
on the same page here.
We got Israel and Gaza,
nucleus of all terrorism worldwide.
A couple of Americans got hurt
of the Gaza war
at the feeding site.
Iran. So I think that
they've been giving aid to the Palestinians out there in Gaza.
That being said, I think you are right. I think that
we are going to allegedly attacking them.
It is an indicator that there is
as they go to the aid sites.
Moving along aid.
But only this time,
Trump wants
2 Americans got injured at the aid site.
Move, from his perspective, and of course, as far as calm in the region itself, there is a lot on the table, obviously, regarding, and this is to your earlier point, regarding what does the day after tomorrow look like, regarding aid issues, regarding
how y'all doing? Appreciate y'all for joining me.
The larger pictures, but none of these can happen without the hostages coming back. And part of the other issue, of course, is what does all this mean for Hamas itself and Hamas's survival? For the Israelis, of course, having Hamas as any part of the day after tomorrow constellation is a non-starter. It's unclear exactly what we're hearing now as far as what Hamas will serve in that capacity. And this has all been part of the back and forth. But on a larger scale, as I said before, this is really a telling moment vis-a-vis the strength of the U.S.-Israel relationship, working together in concert when it comes to a larger and a greater threat vis-a-vis Iran and Iranian proxies.
Is there any indication that Hamas would ever agree to anything that removes them from leadership? They have held on and pretty much said that they're not giving up. So is there anything that could actually make that happen?
There's really no indication of that. I mean, the current, what we know to be, as of now, the parameters that have been put out vis-a-vis the deal itself, that we're looking at a 60-day deal. We're looking at, on the first day one, there are 20 live hostages. There will be 8 released and then two others released on day 50. In addition to all of that, there will be also the returning of the dead during this phase.
Appreciate y'all for hitting the like button.
It is a very complex and a drawn-out period, and it's going to be emotionally, psychologically.
Getting updated on the latest on Israel and Hamas.
To swallow vis-a-vis this kind of phased, drawn-out.
Let me know what you think about it in the comment section.
Nobody knows what's going to happen until they actually cross the border. The three sticking points in the deal itself have to do, one, with the pushing back of the Israeli army further back as far as where they are inside of Gaza. Secondly, had to do it, of course, with the issue of the Gaza aid. And again, to your earlier point, as far as replacing the GHF once again with UNRWA and other UN agencies that, of course, are basically Hamas. And the third deal, of course, relates to the ending of the war itself, which, again, the Israelis want to have a window of an opportunity to resume if things don't go as planned. And these are all part of the
I want to see if Trump can end this war.
And this is
get a ceasefire.
Point. It does allow Hamas to be part of the day after tomorrow scenario.
We get a ceasefire.
It allows Hamas to govern this situation in whatever capacity they're in. That's part of the real issue that the Israelis have, and that goes against the stated objective goals of the war vis-a-vis the decapitation, the removal of Hamas altogether. The other question that I'm adding here, and really I think that really needs to be looked at very carefully, that could be part of the conversations, and I'm sure it will be on Monday when Netanyahu is in D.C., as it relates to the participation of other partners in the Arab world, the Saudis, the Egyptians, and other partnerships, whether or not they will join forces and whether or not they can marginalize Hamas, which is really going to be part of the questioning that will assuage the Israelis in regard to what Gaza looks like after all this ends.
All right. Dr. Asaf Romarowski, thank you so much for taking the time, as always, to be here with us. Obviously, a lot covered there, but is there anything else that you want to add here before I let you go?
No, at this point. I mean, obviously, as you said, there's a lot fluid. Things will obviously be more revealed on Monday during these meetings. But as of now, I think that there's a lot to keep an eye on, and things are changing at a rapid pace.
All right. Thank you so much, as always, for taking the time to be here. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go over here. Boom. Boom. All right, we on over there. That's what I've been waiting on. I've been waiting to click on the other side
was
over
struck
here.
directly. This home sheltered around 60 civilians. So far, 20 have been rescued or pulled from the rubble, most of whom are women and children. 4 dead have been confirmed, and the rest remain trapped beneath the debris. Among the injured are children, no older than 5. The rescue teams lack the capacity to respond to the scale of destruction, especially in areas east of Gaza City. The Israeli occupation targets anyone who approaches these areas directly. Our appeal is clear. Civil defense teams must be empowered to work freely without inherent risk to their lives.
So it is confirmed by the spokesperson of the civil defense, they cannot handle every attack in east of the Gaza City as the Israeli army open fire and prevent them to access to this area. As he confirmed also, 4 just arrived, 4 people killed, arrived to Al Ahli Hospital, and many injured. The vast majority of them are just women and kids. This is the situation here, and the situation is really, really catastrophic. Muad Al-Kahlout, Al Jazeera, from Al Ahli Hospital, Palestine.
Rescuers are searching for survivors of a flash flood that hit central Texas on Friday, leaving at least 43 people dead, including 15 children. 27 girls from a camp on the Guadalupe River are still missing. Shihab Ratansi reports from Ingram in Texas.
This is the distance between the Guadalupe River and Colleen Lucas's house, but in the early hours of Friday morning, it wasn't spared.
It's devastating. We lost a lot, but we're blessed to be upright and standing, because everything that we lost can be replaced. Lives cannot.
If you see where the water level's at now, we're probably standing about 25 feet higher, and the water ended up 5 feet into the house.
This area is about 17 kilometers northeast upstream from Camp Mystic, the children's camp that was inundated about 2 hours earlier. The banks along the Guadalupe River were flooded for tens of kilometers on both sides.
Yeah, San Antonio got a lot of hills over there, guys. I know that.
But her husband was
I know that area
He was
real
woken
well.
up by the fire chief, and they were knocking on the door, which he's hard of hearing. Luckily, he got up. But let me take you what he walked into. He barely got out.
There's much discussion now about whether sufficient warnings were given. Emergency alerts, though, were sent out on cell phones, but in the middle of the night, many of them were on silent and people were asleep. This is a region known as Flash Flood Alley, and the riverbanks overflow frequently, just not by this much. It's notable that the Trump administration is attempting to blame the National Weather Service for not sending out evacuation alerts in
what's
time.
up, David? How you
It's
doing?
a narrative that neatly fits in with its message that all the agencies that monitor the climate need to be wound down or privatized. But in fact, the reason why so many people were able to escape is precisely because of the work of those
Thank you for
agencies.
joining me.
And that work is now under threat. Shia Bertansi, Al Jazeera, Ingram, Texas.
Bro.
Still ahead on Al Jazeera.
I'm Lucia Newman in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, where leaders of the global south are arriving to hold the BRICS summit.
See, one thing about that area over there by San Antonio, guys, it's a whole lot of hills over there. And then what? That rain dropped so fast, and then it happened at night. So they didn't get no warning. They didn't get no warning. You got kids at camp. Man, got to pray for those people, guys. That area over there, man, is nothing but hills and open land. That's all it is. I know that area real, real well. Out there, it's near San Antonio. It's wild.
Opinion and expertise.
So I think there's three very, very significant changes here. One, there's permanency of a lot of provisions for businesses. So there's enhanced deductions, and they're done on a permanent basis. And that'll help businesses quite a bit because it provides certainty.
Now they're talking about the big, beautiful bill.
Thing is that Trump delivered for hardworking families. So we've got no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. We've got an enhanced deduction for seniors. We've also got an expanded child tax credit. So that's really going to help working families. And then the third thing that I think is in there that we're going to hear a lot about in the future is the Trump accounts. And these are accounts the federal government is going to put $1,000 into those accounts for newborns between 2025 and 2028. And in addition, for kids under the age of 8, families will be able to save for them. So that's going to be a remarkable change for families.
When we talk about the federal deficit, that's been another topic that a lot of people have discussed. There's been different numbers that are thrown around in every direction. One group will say this, another group will say this. Do we have any sort of idea what impact this is going to have on the federal deficit, or does that kind of remain to be seen?
I think a lot of that remains to be seen because, again, a lot of the provisions in this
Thank you for hitting the like button.
Are actually going to be very pro-growth. So whether or not it ultimately adds to the deficit is kind of to be determined.
Anything that people, businesses, anything of that nature should be preparing now that it has passed? Is there anything folks out there can do? Any advice that you have for them?
So There's a couple things for businesses in particular, like there's full expensing for capital investments. So there's a great opportunity here to go out and invest in capital. And for individuals, particularly those that might be able to take advantage of the no tax on tips and no tax on overtime, those provisions are retroactive to January 2025. And while the calculation will be done on your next tax return, it's important to go back and maybe look at your withholding and adjust those withholdings so you can take advantage of these provisions today.
All right, Rosemary, Becky, thank you so much for taking the time to join us here and break it all down. Anything else you want to add about any of this here before I let you go?
I think, yeah, just
retroactive
real quickly,
means
I think
that you're
this
gonna
is
get
gonna
back
be a
pay.
great opportunity, and I think that more and more as this bill plays out, we're going to see the impact that it's truly going to have.
All right, Rosemary, thank you again for taking the time to be here. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
That's good to know that it's retroactive. She said something about kids up under 8 as far as the investment accounts. 'Cause I already know that if you have a newborn kid in between 25 and 2028, they automatically gonna give you $1,000 for investment account, S&P 500. But she said something about if the kid is less than 8 years old. So it might be for everybody. As long as the kid is less than 8 years old. You got to check into that one though. I was listening, but I really wasn't comprehending to what she said. I was just listening to the 8. If the kid is under 8, that's when I started listening. But yeah, it's some things going on with that big, beautiful bill. Somebody can find something, in it for them. That's how it works.
With inclusive global governance to give a meaningful voice to the global south, especially in the trading system. Brazil's presidential foreign policy advisor warns the multilateral order is collapsing.
We are coming back to a kind of world disorder, which is very similar to the one that preceded the 2 world wars. We don't want a world
Appreciate y'all for joining me. We got what?
We want
37 people in the building.
In which the interest of developing
Let me know where you're from.
Into account.
BRICS are larger than the G7 countries in terms of global GDP, but it's not a trade bloc, nor a military alliance. For all the security, the heads of state who would presumably want it most aren't coming. Russia's Vladimir Putin, for example, will be attending the meeting online because of the international arrest warrant issued against him by the International Criminal Court. And for the first time, China's president has declined to attend. This seen as a huge blow for fellow BRICS founder and host country Brazil.
Wow, y'all hear that?
Prior to the summit, China had failed to convince BRICS foreign ministers to take a more aggressive position against President Donald Trump's tariff war. One of the forum's achievements has been the creation of a development bank for the global south as an alternative to the World Bank.
Our bank is more than just a major bank for emerging countries. It proves that a reformed financial architecture is viable.
The summit agenda includes health, climate change, and artificial intelligence cooperation. But some claim the forum wants to challenge Western dominance.
It's undeniable that China dominates the bloc, but it's not like the Soviet hegemony. The bloc isn't super organized, nor does it have radical global impact.
The real question is, can an expanded BRICS, whose members have very different political systems and priorities, form a sufficiently unified bloc to have any significant impact? Lucia Newman, Al Jazeera, Rio de Janeiro.
Billionaire Elon Musk has followed through on his pledge to create a new U.S. political party if Donald Trump's budget bill was approved, naming it the America Party. Musk floated the idea with his followers on X after the president signed the One Big Beautiful Bill into law on Friday. Musk and Trump had a public falling out over the spending legislation, with the entrepreneur calling it a debt slavery bill. In Syria, civil defense workers are battling wildfires near the coast in Latakia province. Officials say a surge in temperatures and strong winds caused the wildfires to spread across large parts of mountainous areas. Emergency crews have faced difficulties controlling the flames. They're also concerned about unexploded ordnance from years of conflict in the area. Montasser Abu Nabut went to a village in the Latakia region and sent us this report.
We are now in the village of Qast al-Ma'af in Latakia. It's one of the most challenging locations for civil defense teams as they try to put out the forest fires. Civil defense teams are battling to contain the wildfires. They are facing many challenges, including very high temperatures, shifting wind speeds, and remnants of war, like landmines that occasionally explode. We can hear some of these explosions nearby. Residents have evacuated Qast al-Ma'af because of the severity of the situation. The fires have reached both sides of the main road. More than 60 teams from the civil defense are currently working to stop the fires from spreading through Latakia's countryside. Turkish teams have also joined the efforts today, along with helicopters that are providing aerial support. The combination of high temperatures and unpredictable winds is spreading the fires, which have now burned more than 5,000 hectares across the Latakia region.
Wildfires have been ravaging Turkey's western coastline, with firefighters battling more than 600 fires in the past
worse and worse, man.
Sinem Kosioglu reports from the Foca district of Izmir province.
11 days ago, a wall of fire raced down this forested slope and engulfed the Ordu family's home in the Ulupunar village of Foca district in Turkey's western city of Izmir. It is the first fire of the season and lasted for 22 hours. A retired police officer, Ahmet Ordu, moved here in 2013 with his wife Fatosh, planting olives and living off the land. That life vanished in minutes. This warped iron beam is a stark reminder of just how intense the heat was.
The fire was in the forest. We thought it wouldn't reach us, but the wind brought the flames to us. We barely escaped. A neighbor's son helped us. Without him, we wouldn't be alive. It was a miracle.
Strong winds, especially after dark, drove sparks through the pines and onto their hilltop. By dawn, half the olive trees were burning, and the house was reduced to rubble. Ahmed's wife Fatosh had stocked a winter's worth of tomato paste and preserves, now reduced to a row of scorched, shattered jars.
We just heard the same thing in San Antonio.
I never imagined we'd go through something like this. I was always so careful with fire, but the blaze came from the forest and engulfed us. I don't want to leave. This is our home.
Fatosh has a hip prosthesis and 14 screws in her spine. She's had 3 surgeries, but still, in the time she has left, she wants to stay here, tend the soil a little, and care for the few chicks that survived.
We spent 13 years building this place. Every stone and tree is our sweat. Half the orchard is gone, and new saplings will take 10 years, longer than we might live.
The municipality has put a shipping container in their garden. It is hot by day and cramped at night, yet they refuse to move.
Yeah, it's getting bad.
Ahmed says the olive trees still need water if they are to survive.
Authorities say the human and material toll from the latest wildfires wasn't catastrophic. But for the families like the Ordus who lost everything,
with no warning,
scars run deep. It'll take years to restore
coming up on people
what
so
the flames
fast.
destroyed in just minutes. Sinem Kosioglu, Al Jazeera, Foca District, Izmir, Turkey.
Like they don't have enough
the world's
time to
biggest
give people
Legoland
warning.
has opened in Shanghai. It cost $550 million to build and is expected to attract more than 2 million people every year. It's just the latest example of foreign entertainment brands flocking to China to open theme parks. Katrina Yu reports from Beijing.
Millions of children around the world enjoy playing with Lego bricks. The Danish toy maker has now opened its biggest Legoland theme park in Shanghai. The 318,000 square meter resort features miniature Chinese landmarks such as the Pearl Tower, the Great Wall, and the Forbidden City. 85 million Lego bricks went into building the park.
I think it's best to play Lego in Legoland because I have
surprised
much less Lego at my place.
President didn't go to
Amusement
the BRICS
parks are
meeting.
a booming business in China. International
That's what I'm
brands are
surprised.
attracted by a burgeoning
He didn't
middle
even
class
come.
and a relatively untapped market
But you
compared
know,
to the
next
West.
week is a big week.
Disneyland opened in Shanghai
I think
in
it's July the
2016.
9th.
A Harry Potter studio tour
I think it's
and
about
Peppa
July the
Pig
9th when it
outdoor
comes to
park
those
are planned for
chairs.
2027. They're part of a plan to boost the city's reputation as a global tourist destination.
The local transportation industry, catering industry, hotel industry, retail industry all benefit. A theme park enhances the city's cultural brand
President
and promotes
Ching
the
of China ain't
consumption
been saying too
attractiveness
much.
of other local projects.
But
didn't
park
show up to the
operators
BRICS
face local challenges.
event?
The opening of a Universal Studios theme park in Beijing in 2021 was hampered by the COVID-19 pandemic. Visitor numbers have since recovered.
Universal Studios was the first international theme park to open in northern China. It attracts
You know,
about
that
10
BRICS
million
currency is
people
supposed to be the
annually,
currency
and many visitors come to the
that
park
take over the
multiple
US
times
dollar.
a year.
I plan to come again in winter. I will have a different feeling and the Harry Potter scenic area will look different because it snows here.
The government hopes the sector will encourage
China,
consumer
Russia,
spending
Brazil.
as the country's economic growth
All of them
slows.
coming together.
Analysts warn
Africa.
there will be losers, with some homegrown operators expected to be squeezed
the
out
main
by
player,
rising
which is
competition.
China,
But for
wasn't even there.
enthusiastic theme park visitors, the ascent of the industry in China is good news. And they're happy to go along for the ride. Katrina Yu, Al Jazeera, Beijing.
All right, that's it from me, Mohammed Jamjoom. The news continues here on Al Jazeera after counting the cost. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, that's what I was surprised about, that Chinese president wasn't even at the meeting for BRICS. Wasn't even at the BRICS meeting. I got to look into that a little bit more. That's real surprising. Because the past, 3 years, they've been standing together for the BRICS currency, to try to take out the US dollar. That's supposed to be their goal. But this is the first time that I've seen where President Xi didn't show up. He's been quiet lately. So got to figure out what's going on with that.
Just give a message. He's out with the teams. He's kind of checking on everybody, just like everybody else. We all need to take downtime to include y'all. So make sure y'all are taking care of yourselves as well. We're in a marathon, and we got to make sure we always think about that and look after each other. So a couple updates. Since 6 a.m. this morning, we've had a combined primary clear, so aerial and ground, of about 100-meter distance on either side of the Guadalupe River from 1 mile north of Camp Mystic up through Hunt and Ingram. So we talked about that briefly this morning. Excuse me. We talked about that briefly this morning. So 100 meters on each side, they are continuing operations on that. We are also working on operations within the city of Kerrville as well, again, along the riverbanks as, since the waters have receded some. We are working on, again, we talked about downtime. We are working on locations for first responders to make sure that they do have, their adequate downtime and their rest. We're constantly going through kind of shift management cycles to make sure that our first responders and our crews and teams are taken care of. Public works, so water is looking good. We've identified some leaks. We've been able to shut those leaks down or isolate those leaks. We will be likely operating off of well water probably for the next foreseeable, about 4 weeks is what we're projecting. So we're not going to be pulling surface water for about 4 weeks. With these type of events, there's a lot of debris, there's a lot of chemicals, a lot of gasoline, a lot of other contaminants that are in there. We are working with TCEQ and other partners in there to make sure that we get these issues addressed as quickly as possible. We get a lot of information for people who are wanting help. Excuse me. A lot of people who are wanting information to help. Best thing you can do, especially right in your small local area, don't go out into major areas. Public Works mentioned just, hey, pick up a little bit of debris in your trash cans or your trash bags. Keep it local, but stay out of the major areas. Everything is still, very, very dangerous, very hazardous conditions. Let me pull up our KPUB utility report. Of course, it went away. So KPUB still has approximately 600 customers that are without power. The largest remaining outage customers are west of Ingram, south of 39, along South Fork of Hunt. KPUB issued a mutual aid request on July 4th. 50 personnel and utilities and contractors from across Texas are coming in to support operations and restoration. Hunt or South Fork sustained extensive storm-related damage, including approximately 40 downed power poles with widespread tree and flood debris, heavily damaged infrastructure. Restoration in these remaining areas will be lengthy and complex, and customers should prepare for multi-day outages. Customers outside of these remaining areas still experiencing an outage should report it to KPUB by calling KPUB's outage line at 855-959-2496. But power has been restored to most of the other customers. Like I said, about 600 are still remaining. A lot of the county is also on Aqua Texas or private wells. We try to get information on that, but we don't have a lot of information as far as private wells are concerned or the status of Aqua Texas. But a big bulk of what we had coming through the Guadalupe is within the city limits, which is on the city limit, or city water supply. Aqua Texas and some of those other public water systems are typically outside of what we're thinking is the damage area, but we have not had any reports from Aqua Texas on outages. And with that, we will take a couple questions.
Is the recovery for some of we're hearing some recovery of bodies in Louise Hayes Park. And the other part of that question is how many red tag buildings are now along the river that the Kerrville Fire Department has issued?
Yeah, so when you talk about red tag, you're talking about like condemned buildings.
Debt of more than $35 trillion.
It's going to add much more to the debt. And so I think without question, this is not a fiscally conservative bill.
Trump has promised an economic boom for Americans, but many are still waiting, struggling with soaring prices and a high cost of living.
The president, vice president, cabinet, all those people, I don't think they really know what the average Joe Blow person goes through every day and what everything costs. They don't have a clue.
Under pressure, Trump is also looking to the Federal Reserve, calling on it to drop rates as low as 1% to stimulate the economy.
We're in a position of wanting to take our time and make a smart decision.
But Chairman Jerome Powell says that's not Trump's call to make. Trump insists the bill will open the door for other economic initiatives to fall into place. But critics argue it will backfire both in the short and long term. Katia Lopez-Odoyan, Al Jazeera, for Counting the Cost.
Harry G. Broadman is the former chief of staff of the President's Council of Economic Advisors in the U.S. He's also a former assistant U.S. trade representative, and he joins us from Washington, D.C. now. Great to have you on the program, Harry. As we're having this conversation, the bill heads to the House of Representatives for that big vote. So do you believe that Donald Trump is going to get his big, beautiful bill as he wants it?
Well, all indications this morning in Washington Times certainly seems that would be the case, that it will pass the House. It will not be a pretty vote, I think, for most of the American people, but I think Trump will ultimately get his way.
And Harry, this will come at a very large cost.
Call it the known missing, which is the 27 camp kids that are missing. We will not put a number on the other side because we just don't know. Campers are coming in for 4th of July weekend. People are camped along the riverbank. People are coming in to visit. There's a number that we just don't know yet, and we don't know what we don't know. So as things are starting to develop and as things are starting to move along, we're not going to put a cap on this. We are just going to continue until we find everything else. One more question. Let me give it to somebody else.
Just one question about current rescue. Can you give us a sense about how often you're seeing a rescue, and just in terms of kind of like, for example, when your last rescue was?
So, obviously with the camps, we've been rescuing people out of these camps by the hundreds, all day. So there's a lot of folks that are shelter in place, so we leave them in place to make sure that we get them food, water, and some of these camps actually now are self-rescuing, if you will. Maybe that's not the right word, but they are self-extricating, if you will. So they're getting water's down, they're getting their own resources, they're not having to tie up local and state resources. We are monitoring them, and they're accounting for their own folks. So that has been going on obviously for over 800 plus people, and we're continuing to do that. So good.
Sorry, one more question. I can absolutely appreciate that right now the focus is finding the missing, and it's a very active search and rescue. But what do you say to the parents that are in grief, understandably frustrated as to how in the world this could happen? How in the world you could have so many campers in the way of this danger and not taken out of there ahead of the storms?
Yeah, that's the question of the hour. But with these, this is last time it was this bad, and this one is even worse than that was 1987.
I feel terrible for those
you can't predict it. Everybody in the media even knows. Everybody who does this and sees this every single day. You have the inverse effect of if you continue to push it, and you see this in Houston areas all the time. You cry wolf. What happens when you continue to ramp things up and you continue to put a lot of information out there? Again, not to harp on the media, but there's a lot of stuff that gets overspun up, and we see that way too often, and then that trickles down. So
the word is that that water came down so fast like a tsunami.
At 3:30.
Now there's a lot of hills in that area.
We did not see any signs of the river rising.
So with no warning,
by 5:20,
I think it happened in the
almost
middle of the
weren't able to
night.
get out of the park on the upper end. It rose that quickly.
So was it a matter of just rising so quickly?
Kids at camp.
Tragedy, or people weren't taking
Horrible situation.
No, this was a massive tragedy, hands down. We are hitting from our, again, flood maps. We're seeing some areas where it's hitting the 100-year flood thing. And again, we talked about the North and South Fork. That water hit perfectly. You heard Chief Nim Kidd talk a little bit about, the wide area. This went from San Angelo to Waco and all. They stage where they can, but you do not know what's going to happen.
Wow.
One, until water falls, and two, the predictions were definitely off. That water and rain fell almost double of what was anticipated, both in the North and South Fork, and converged into one place, and it rose that quick. So thank you.
Sheriff, do you mind repeating the numbers again? The latest numbers, do you mind repeating them again?
Sheriff, I got it. All right, so one more time. Could you get the mic, sir?
Can you give us the mic, sir? Thank you.
All right, so one more time. We have 43 victims who have been recovered. Out of that 43, 28 of them are adults, 12 of them are pending identification, 15 of them are children, and 5 of the children are still pending identification. The next press briefing will be at 10 in the morning and one to follow at 3 in the afternoon. Thank you. Do you have an updated number on the...
That's the latest update we've heard out of Texas. We're going to take a break. Back in a moment.
Man, that's a bad situation. Man, can you just imagine what they went through? A whole lot of rain and a whole lot of water in the middle of the night. And word is the water came down like a tsunami. Because it ain't nothing but hills and stuff over there. With no warning. No warning. Terrible. So we shout out to them. You know, we praying for them down there. San Angelo, Waco. Those areas got hit real, real hard. It's crazy. Yeah, I appreciate y'all for joining me, man. I just figured I'd go live and kick with the people and see what y'all got going on for tonight. Hope y'all had a great 4th of July. You know, but it's still the weekend. You know, how y'all doing out there? Appreciate y'all for coming to kick it with me. Y'all could kick it with anybody else, but y'all kicking it with me at 10:30 at night, and I appreciate you. The total count now is up to 43 people. Daniel, yes, prayers. It's up to 43 people now. I know that area real, real well. And it's now that I think about it, it's kind of scary.
Interesting story to follow over the past 24 hours. It started yesterday. They now are confirming 32 dead.
Carol, hi, Carol.
18 of them are adults.
I'm from Kerrville, Texas. The flooding was crazy
and
here,
they're
man.
still searching for live
Prayers
victims.
up to you,
Can
John.
clarify, because they were talking about the transition eventually
Yeah, I
from
can just
rescue
imagine.
to recovery. What are they talking about there?
Well, what they're talking about, Austin, is right now there's an active search for any survivors. And so,
John,
you know, as,
did it happen in the
Governor
middle of the
Abbott said,
night?
time is of the essence. I think that was his term. That he was trying to get out there with as much speed as possible to find anyone surviving. You could have people who are on rooftops, although I think they've checked the rooftops pretty carefully. People who could have climbed up in trees. Those people can be tough to see. And by the way, if they're up in a tree, they've got to hang on.
Wow.
And, you know, time is time. And people will get tired. They'll lose their grip. And if they fall into the water, the chances of survival are not that great.
Shout out to Kima.
They want to get out there and they want to search this area. So this is the rescue phase. Now, at some point, once they have decided that the likelihood of any any survivors is pretty much
ATL.
nil.
Shout out to ATL.
They will switch to the recovery phase.
If you're
I don't
looking
think
for
they're
me,
at that
homie, I'm in
point
the
anytime
ATL.
soon. I thought that question about switching to recovery was a little presumptive.
Shout out to Kima.
Right
we love
now,
the
they're
Kima
very much in the
boardwalk.
rescue phase and looking for
Yeah,
anyone
man,
out there.
at
And there
3
could
a.m.,
very well be
the level
survivors
was
that
not
have
that
found
bad,
high
but in
ground,
just 45 minutes, the
places out
water
of the
level
water
rose.
that they still have to discover. And they did describe that,
My
that
house was
grid
flooded.
search methodology they use where they go through and they look at this stuff.
We praying
in
for
a very
y'all, man. Hope
systematic
everything
manner,
turns out well.
clearing anything.
Yeah, that's what I was
basically
hearing,
going through
that
and looking at
the
all
water
the
came
terrain,
in like a
clearing the
tsunami.
terrain as they go through. They will be marking on the ground so that people know what terrain has been actually looked at. And trying to find anyone
Prayers
out
for the
there.
hill
And of
country.
course, with everyone missing, but especially with
Yeah, it's
these
a lot of hills.
little girls that were in that
A lot of
campsite,
hills around that
I
area.
think everybody there is very much putting out 110% to try and find any
Look
survivors
at that water,
that could
guys.
be out there.
You're no stranger to disasters like this, Hal. They alluded to it during the press conference.
Look how fast
Can you
it's going.
describe how something like this happens, how quickly the water moves in, and
Look at
why
that.
we're talking about so many casualties as a result?
Yeah, I can, and I'll explain this. I used to, under the U.S. Northern Command, I was an emergency preparedness liaison officer. I worked with the FEMA regions on this. After retiring, I moved into training FEMA regions, training defense coordinating elements.
That's
work
at
with the
least,
FEMA regions.
in my opinion,
And
that's at
I've
least
trained
20 or
everything
30,
from local
maybe
and
40,
community centers
well,
all
about
the way
20
up
or
to
30
foreign
miles
governments,
per hour.
in emergency
How
management,
fast that
emergency
water
preparedness
moves.
stuff. So that's kind of where my background is on this. And what I can tell you is that when you look at the weather situation, when you look at the rain coming in, you saw where they were talking about 4 to 6 inches of rain coming in. Well, that just tells you one part of it is how much rain's coming in. Then you have to look at the topography. You have to look at the terrain. And there's a lot of variables there. Obviously, the terrain in terms of, is it mountainous, hilly? This is up in that North Texas hill country, an area I know pretty well. It's very channelized or canalized, depending on how you want to describe it, where the water will collect very quickly and then move into these channels. You have to look at the soil. Is it going to be where the water hits and then runs off very quickly? Will it soak in? You look at vegetation, what state it's in. You look at a variety of factors that will deal with how fast that water.
Watch the water. I heard
accumulate
that
in low
somewhere.
areas. In this case, from what they're reporting, it went from having literally seeing very little or no change in the water level of the river, or the rivers, I should say, to jumping up over 26 feet within a period of 45 minutes to an hour. That is a phenomenal water rate.
That's
And you
exactly
can
what
imagine with that,
John
that people who are
said.
camping, and this is the middle of the night. We're talking between 3 and 5 o'clock. The people who are camping there, all of a sudden they're surrounded with rushing water. This isn't a seep flood where it just slowly raises up. This is a
That's
flash
crazy.
flood. So some would look at it and say, well, the water is slowly rising. Yes, but once they get out in that water, that's fast moving water. There's a lot of debris in there, which means they can get knocked off their feet. And you can imagine if you get knocked off your feet, you go underwater with all the rocks, trees, automobiles, whatever could be underwater, that the survival chances drop considerably when that happens. So that's what they're looking at. That's the scenario that occurred in that area.
Al, we heard Governor Abbott declare, it was a disaster declaration, I believe, was how he began the press conference. What levers does that pull, and what resources does that give for an operation like this?
Well, Governor Abbott did what he has to do in order to kick some things in. And I think Kristi Noem, the DHS secretary, kind of explained it goes from local to state to federal. There is a process where the local government declares a disaster.
Yeah, my heart
and
goes
then that
out
goes
to
up
all
to the
those
state for request
parents
for
of
assistance,
the
where they
missing
declare a
children.
disaster.
Yeah, that's
and then that
horrible.
includes a request for federal assistance. And then when President Trump, and I'm certain that he's going to declare a disaster, that kicks in what's called the Stafford Act. And the Stafford Act deals with unlocking the resources of the federal government to come in and provide assistance on a major level. Now, you already heard that some things at the local level, for example, the U.S. Coast Guard is out there. Keep in mind, the U.S. Coast Guard does search and rescue all the time. That is one of their primary missions. They also have a lot of unique capabilities, particularly with helicopters and air support and people who are trained to do things like drop out of the sky and rescue people out of off of buildings or potentially out of trees or any place else they might be. So the Coast Guard is out there. They were invaluable during Hurricane Katrina, and everybody got a chance to see what they do. And then Customs and Border Protection. One of the things I should mention that might have been missed is that the Border Patrol, CBP, when they're on the border, they look for missing people all the time. People cross the border out into the desert. They can get hurt, they can get lost, all sorts of stuff. So the Border Patrol, by necessity, by virtue of its mission, does a lot of search and rescue, just simply looking for people, illegal migrants who have gotten lost or maybe hurt or dying out in the desert or somewhere else. So they do this. They also do water rescue. Keep in mind that a lot of the border, particularly in Texas, is the Rio Grande River. So there
they
are
need the
search and
Cajun
rescue
Navy.
teams
I'm
they
quite
have to
sure
get
they're
involved
probably
with very
there.
quickly.
Cajun
When
Navy.
people trying to cross the river.
Shout out to the
will get
Cajun
swept
Navy.
away. And so they're very adept at
My
this.
boy
So
be
these are a
putting the
couple of
work in.
resources that the Department of Homeland Security has that they kind of rushed in there very quickly. But once you see the Stafford Act put in there, you can see a
Cajun
lot of
Navy be
resources.
putting
And
the
then you
work
can see
in.
the sort of stuff that I used to work with, which is bringing in potential military resources, federal military resources that could be used to provide assistance as well.
Al, where does something like this go from here? We have been
I remember them
watching
from
the
Harvey.
video scrolling on our screen of the water, and this is scary stuff. I mean, you can see the trees there,
Right.
so far up on the branches there. That's compared to this live vantage point right now.
Yes,
I will
that's
say,
where I remember
just
them from,
this
Harvey.
one specific vantage point, it looks like the water is receding. How important is that with them as they begin the rescue and recovery efforts?
Well, for search and rescue, something like this helps immensely because when
They
you can
saved a
imagine
lot of lives.
that water, you just
doing
can't see
Harvey.
through it. It is murky. It is filled with all sorts of stuff, things just under the water, and so it's very difficult. If someone, well, they wouldn't be alive, but if there was someone trapped under the water, when they're looking for their remains, if you will, it'd be very difficult to do so. But what it does do is it provides an ability to move more freely through the area. Hopefully they can get on vehicles with high clearance, depending on how bad the mud is or whatever, and cover more area more quickly to see if there's anybody in those trees. Also, if somebody has been in those trees as the water lowers down, as you don't see that fast moving water, there might be an opportunity for those who have survived in higher levels like the trees or something to potentially get down and then move through that calmer water to safety where they can be potentially rescued and link up with rescue forces or anybody else who would happen to be out there. So this is absolutely critical, but it also gives you an idea of the flash flood condition. The water jumped up 26 feet. That's over 8 meters within about an hour. And just as quickly, it is lowered back down, and you're seeing how fast it came down. So it was a very powerful, and I can't say that enough, very powerful in terms of kinetic energy flash flood that moved through there. And you got to get a sense for that. With a slower moving flood, a lot of times you won't see as many vehicles. Steep flooding, you'll see it. But with flash floods, people, as they get warning, will hop in their vehicles and get out of there as quickly as possible. What you saw in the images coming out of this one is a lot of vehicles were caught up in the flood, and that's an indication that people just didn't have warning.
Why should the government help
to
them?
get out of there?
Well,
And
because we are American
it's
citizens too. We pay taxes just like everybody else.
What's going to probably indicate
That's
is
why
a lot of people just weren't able to get out. I mean, we have to remain hopeful that they're going to find more survivors.
We're Americans too, Cindy.
That's the hope. Of course, the other side of that is they're also going to find those who did not survive, and that's the tragedy, the catastrophe that something like this entails.
Can you speak to the involvement of the Department of Homeland Security in something like this? We just heard Secretary Noem talking about recovery efforts. How does DHS get involved? How does FEMA get involved?
Well, FEMA is a component of the Department of Homeland Security. And at the highest level, Secretary Noem oversees all federal resources on the Department of Homeland Security, but that includes FEMA. That also, FEMA is also the executive agency, as is DHS,
wants to help
for anything under the Stafford Act. That's what they are the lead on. That's where you're going to see all the federal money, all the federal resources kind of falling under that presidential declaration with the Stafford Act. So she has an absolutely critical role in that. Now, and within FEMA, there's the administrator who's in charge of all of FEMA. But within Texas, that is what
didn't he help North Carolina and California?
The nation is broken up into 10 FEMA regions. I used to work very closely with FEMA. Well, I was actually assigned for FEMA Region 9, which is pretty close to Texas, not that far away, dealing with the southwestern states and going across Pacific all the way out to Guam. So that's a huge region, but I have worked with FEMA regions all around the country. And FEMA Region 6 is, I think it's Regional Response Coordination Center is out of Denton, Texas. And I was kind of listening. They mentioned the State Emergency Operations Center had been set up. I would imagine at this point that the Regional Response Coordination Center is fully up and going.
They helped, he helped North Carolina
to coordinate all those federal resources.
Remember?
And I would think that they're moving proactively. They're not waiting for that Stafford Act to actually.
He wasn't even.
They're not waiting for that.
He wasn't even the president when they helped North Carolina.
So once that happens, they can move things as fast as possible. And I would also imagine that there are
did he help California
orders that are going out to a number of potentially military units, but also to a number of other federal resources that are being put on standby, ready to deploy to help with that effort out there. So that's part of the process that FEMA does, bring in other resources from other states as well.
Al, is there any questions about the recovery effort moving forward? Are there anything that you're going to be watching for in the coming days? Obviously, the weather in the coming days is going to be a huge factor moving forward, correct?
Weather's going to be a huge factor coming forward. Obviously, I'll be watching all the resources being channeled from the state, also from the federal government going in there. I'll be watching to see if federal military resources that could be brought to bear are in there. There are a number of federal military installations, larger units, very large units, particularly air units that are in Texas that could be potentially leveraged to support this if they need them. You know, the other thing is you have a limited amount of space out there. So there is that thing where they have to control it. They don't get too much going out there, because sometimes you get too many resources in a small area. You can overwhelm that area, and pretty soon it becomes a bigger coordination problem than anything else. But I'm also going to be watching something which I think might be a little, not completely unique, but more unique, is you heard about the helicopters flying around. I think they mentioned that explicitly. But I have heard that there are drones being employed. I'm kind of curious about how that's being done. I'm kind of curious if these are just government-owned drones, like local, state, or federal government drones, if there might be citizenry that are being brought in on an exigent basis to help with the search and rescue using drones. And then, of course, the big thing is airspace deconfliction. You know, one of the things we saw with the recent fires, the Palisades fire, the Eaton fire, but specifically the Palisades fire, is that there was a resident in the area that was flying a drone, and the airspace, he was not getting clearance to the airspace, flying that drone, and the drone actually struck an aircraft that was delivering,
Super Scooper.
Super Scooper, yeah, that was delivering water to drop on the fires, and took the Super Scooper out of commission. Didn't crash it, but it did create damage where it wasn't able to be used. That's one of the things we'll be watching very closely in this environment, is if there are drones being used, how are they going to control those drones? How are they going to control that airspace? You can imagine with helicopters, and I'm sure fixed wing will be out there as well, is to make sure you don't have any air-to-air mishaps that could occur. And so I'll be watching that very carefully, and that's because you're just seeing this rapid increase in the employment of drones in just about everything we do. Obviously, we talk about this in warfare all the time, but also we're seeing more and more drones used for things like search and rescue. So I'll be looking at that very, very carefully to see what happens there, and hoping that they manage it well so that there is nothing that goes wrong in the employment of any aviation assets in this effort.
Al Kemper is a retired Marine Intelligence Officer, national security analyst, and the host of the Strat Podcast. You can listen to the Strat Podcast anywhere podcasts are available. Thanks for your insight, Hal. Have a good weekend.
All right, you too, Austin.
Yeah. So yeah, guys, we gotta pray for them people over there, and yeah, they is. We gotta pray for those people in Kerrville over there near San Antonio, guys. A lot of kids still are not accounted for, and grown-ups. So I appreciate y'all for hanging out with me. It's 11 o'clock here where I'm at. I appreciate y'all, all 42 people that's in the building. Appreciate y'all for hanging out with me. That's probably all the updates we're going to get tonight. Until in the morning, we'll find out a little bit more about what's going on. finding out Israel and Gaza, Israel is cranking it back
Hello,
up.
I'm Mohammed Jamjoom. This is Al Jazeera Live from Doha. Also coming up,
Can we get a ceasefire?
more than 700 people have now died in
there.
Israeli attacks on people waiting for food at sites run by the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Plus,
Texas talks bad about.
I'm Shabratansi in Texas,
having
where
to help
communities
blue
up
states.
and down the Guadalupe River have been devastated.
Why
by flash
should
floods.
we help?
and wildfires spread across northwest Syria. We have a special report from the scene.
Who is we? Cindy? Who is we? You say you like we not Americans or something.
Israeli forces have intensified strikes on Gaza ahead of a new round of ceasefire talks in Doha. At least 13 Palestinians have been killed in the early hours of Sunday. 6 people, most.
You say you like we ain't Americans. That's where we going now? That's where we going? I don't know nobody in Texas that talk bad about blue states, Cindy. I don't know nobody in Texas that you're just being negative. I don't know nobody that talks bad about helping blue states. Do you know anything about Texas? Majority of the major cities in Texas, majority of these cities are Democrats. I hope you realize that. Majority of all these major cities in Texas, Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, are all Democrat cities. You do realize that, right? It ain't about red and blue. We all Americans. That's why America is so divided now. Texas talk about having to help blue states. That's not true. That's not true. Yeah, that's right. They don't even care about people no more. You mixing politicians with U.S. citizens.
This is going to be a disaster. And I really hope there will be a ceasefire and that we will be allowed to use all the routes, Egypt, Jordan, and the Israel routes, and all the openings to Gaza, so that we really can assist quickly everyone that needs our assistance.
Doctors and other medical workers are also being targeted by Israeli strikes. Musa Khafaja was a consultant at Nasser Hospital. He was among at least 8 people killed in an airstrike on tents in Al Mawasi early on Saturday morning. 3 of his children were also killed in the attack.
That's
One of
right,
his sons
Dalen.
survived. Dr. Khafaja's death adds to a grim toll. More than 1,500 health workers have been killed in Gaza since Israel began its war on the Strip. Dr. Ahmed Al-Farah works at Nasser Hospital in southern Gaza. He described what healthcare workers witness on the ground.
Every day is more sad than the day before. Every day we are receiving sad news and striking news. Dr. Musa wasn't the first, and he won't be the last one, unfortunately. They are targeted medical fields, doctors, nurses, even ambulance drivers. Everything belongs to the medical
America
field.
from Israel.
Dr. Musa was one of the high morals and honesty and integrity in his work. He was working without talking. He's no problems. He's a nice doctor. We were shocked when we heard about his death.
What I'm realizing,
America
got a lot of work to do.
They are working under pressure since the beginning of this war. And
we're so
now
divided.
they are working under more and extra pressure because of they are afraid to.
It's actually worse than what I thought it was.
Happening for their colleagues, and they
got
are
people
already exhausted.
Since 2
years, they didn't have
a whole nother state of people
any vacation or rest
because of
since
what they say in politics.
War.
That's bad business, man.
In all, at least 78 people were killed in
And
Israeli
a lot of
attacks
people
across
feel
Gaza on
like,
Saturday. A UN-run
that-
school used as a shelter for the displaced
her name? That
came under
Cindy.
Israeli drone fire.
A lot of people
that
feel
strike
like
killed
that.
5 and injured many
That's
others.
sad.
The school houses hundreds of people forced to leave their homes by the Israeli military. And Israeli forces also hit a home east of Gaza City, burying many Palestinians. It was attacked without warning. Mu'ath al-Kahlout reports from a hospital where the injured are being treated. Many are women and children.
Again, the Israeli army committed a massacre against the Palestinians who were sheltering east of the Zaytun neighborhood.
Let me see what I haven't even looked at.
A house belonging to Nasrallah family has been targeted without any sort of warning in Al Zaytun neighborhood, resulted 3 killed so far and many injured people arriving to Al Ahli Arab Hospital. And I'm talking to you from the reception. The vast majority of those who just arrived to Al Ahli Hospital are just women and kids. And here is, as
Hey,
it's
John, what's going on? How you doing?
one of the injured people who just arrived to Al Ahli Hospital. And to talk more about the situation, we have the spokesperson of the Civil Defense Forces, Mr. Mahmoud Basal. أستاذنا الكريم، ما الذي حدث في الآونة؟
The Israeli occupation targeted a home belonging to the Reswallah family. It was a 4-story building, and the upper 3 floors were struck directly. This home sheltered around 60 civilians. So far, 20 have been rescued or pulled from the rubble, most of whom are women and children. 4 dead have been confirmed, and the rest remain trapped beneath the debris. Among the injured are children, no older than 5. The rescue teams lack the capacity to respond to the scale of destruction, especially in areas east of Gaza City. The Israeli occupation targets anyone who approaches these areas directly. Our appeal is clear. Civil defense teams must be empowered to work freely without inherent risk to their lives.
So it is confirmed by the spokesperson of the civil defense. They cannot
That's why I didn't like what Donald Trump said.
East of the Gaza
Democrats
City,
don't like me,
army
and I don't like them either.
Them to access
he wasn't supposed to have said that.
As he confirmed also, 4 people killed, arrived to Al Ahli Hospital, and many injured. The vast majority of them
gotta understand how this works.
Women and kids. This is the situation here, and the situation
They act like they
is
divided,
really
but they not.
catastrophic.
Trust me.
معاذ الكحلوت الجزيرة from Al Ahli
They
Hospital,
not.
Palestine.
They both do the same thing. Just do it a little different. They both do the same thing.
Rescuers are searching for survivors of a flash flood that hit central Texas on Friday, leaving at least 43 people dead, including 15 children. 27 girls from a camp on the Guadalupe River are still missing. Shihab Ratansi reports from Ingram in Texas.
Every president adds on to the deficit.
This is the distance between the Guadalupe River.
They always say
his house, but in the early hours of Friday morning,
we're passing the dead on.
It's devastating.
To the next generation.
We lost a lot.
And all realistically,
but we're blessed.
Nobody's going to pay the debt. Standing. I'm starting to believe
because everything that
there is no
can be replaced.
They just saying that.
Lives cannot.
Ever since I can remember.
Where the water level's at now, we're probably standing about 25
they've been saying
feet
that
higher,
America has been
and the
in
water
debt,
ended up 5 feet into the house.
And they always
this
add
area
on
is
to
about
the debt,
17 kilometers
and then they
northeast
always say
from Camp Mystic, the children's camp that was
that our
inundated
kids and
about
grandkids
2 hours earlier.
don't have to pay off
the banks
the debt.
along the Guadalupe River were flooded for tens of kilometers.
We need to realize how long they've been saying
Colleen
that.
had gone to work when the waters hit, but her
nobody's
going
to pay off that
he
debt.
He was woken up by the fire chief,
it's
and they were knocking on the door. What she's hard of hearing. Luckily he got up. But let me take you what he walked into.
Keep on adding on to the debt.
He barely got out.
There's much discussion now about whether sufficient warnings were given. Emergency alerts, though, were sent out on cell phones, but in the middle of the night, many of them were on silent.
That's really what's going on.
This is a region known as Flash Flood Alley.
America really ain't no dead.
Frequently, just not by this much. It's notable that the Trump administration is attempting to blame the National Weather Service for not sending out evacuation alerts in time. It's a narrative that neatly fits in with its message that all the agencies that monitor the climate need to be wound down or privatized. But in fact, the reason why so many people were able to escape is precisely because of the work of those agencies. And that work is now under threat. Shihab Ratansi, Al Jazeera, Ingram, Texas.
Still ahead on Al Jazeera.
I'm Lucia Newman in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, where leaders of the global south are arriving to hold the BRICS summit.
That's something we got to think about, though, guys. Every president say the same thing. They always say the same thing about the debt. But they keep adding to the debt. Every president, if you really think about it, all of them do the same thing. They just distribute out the money differently to who they want to give it to. And then the other side always talk bad about the other side passing out debt, passing out all this money and adding on to the debt. But then when they get in office, they do the same exact thing. Have y'all noticed that? Am I the only one that's noticed that? On either side, they say the same thing. But then when they get in office, they do the same thing. And also you got to understand, they want us divided. They want us like how people coming in here, going back and forth. That's what they want. They want that. They don't want we the people really together. Neither one of them want it. Neither one of those politicians want the people to really come together and get on one accord. Because trust me, those politicians, whether it's red or blue, they on one accord. But just in public, they act like they not. You seen, I think that was at Jimmy Carter's funeral. Obama and Trump had us thinking they were enemies. Did y'all see how they was communicating at Jimmy Carter's funeral? They really ain't enemies, bro. It's all politics. And we got to realize that as a people. We got to come together as a people. And trust me, they don't want the American people coming together. They don't want that. They don't. They want us arguing over red and blue. Like that person did in the comments. That's how they want us to be. Just like that. Over what some politicians say. Sad. So I've been on here long enough, guys. I appreciate y'all for rocking with me. Everybody that, came in and kicked it with us and your comments, really, really appreciate it. That let us know what's really going on in the world, how other people feel, what's going on in different areas. I like that. You know what I'm saying? See, things like this in the comment section, you don't get offended, right? You just get educated and try to stay 2 or 3 steps ahead and understand what's going on. So with that being said, I love and I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for kicking it with me and coming and joining me. To the next one, I'm out.